Birmingham, Alabama, Thursday, June 27th, 2022, 3:06 p.m. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Reporters lined the aisles. Cameras were tucked into every corner. It was supposed to be another routine city hearing until it became the story that would rock the entire state. On the witness stand sat Mayor Gregory Langston, polished and practiced, wearing a smug smile as he denied every allegation brought against him. Bribery? Number displacement of low-income families? Misunderstood policies? Abuse of power? Absolutely not. And then they called the next witness, Andre Bell, 12 years old. Slim suit, nervous eyes, but a spine of steel. He stepped forward slowly. The room fell silent. Andre adjusted the mic, cleared his throat, and with one finger pointed, he said, "Mr. Mayor, you are the one who—" The courtroom gasped. This was not just a child. This was a witness. And what came next would change everything. This is the story of Andre Bell, a 12-year-old black boy who risked everything to speak the truth in front of those who thought they were untouchable. A mayor lied. A boy exposed him. The city trembled. Comment: truth has no age. If you're ready for the most unforgettable confrontation of the year. Because sometimes the smallest voice delivers the loudest justice. Andre Bell was not supposed to be at the center of the biggest political scandal in Birmingham's recent history. He was supposed to be studying for his science quiz, walking home from school with his backpack slung over one shoulder, and reading books about planets and rockets. But life in Block 9 rarely followed the script. Block 9 was one of Birmingham's oldest neighborhoods, a place full of the proud families, chipped bricks, and stories carved into every sidewalk crack. It was also a place the city had long forgotten, potholes unfilled, parks broken down, and trash pickups that never came on time. Andre lived with his grandmother in a small, two-bedroom apartment. She was tough, sharp-tongued, and the unofficial voice of the neighborhood. When something needs saying, she told him often, you don't wait for someone else to say it. You stand up. You speak out. Weeks before the courtroom chaos, the community center just 2 blocks from their home caught fire under suspicious circumstances. It had been scheduled for renovations, thanks to a petition signed by hundreds of Block 9 residents. Then came the whispers. Then the documents. A local journalist leaked city records that showed funds earmarked for the community center had been rerouted. The destination? A private golf course development near Mayor Gregory Langston's estate. Andre's grandma had been helping organize a case against the mayor. She had spoken at town halls, rallied local churches, and even prepped to testify at the hearing. But days before she was set to speak, she collapsed. A stroke. Hospitalized. Unable to attend. Andre sat beside her hospital bed, her frail fingers wrapped around his. "Don't let them silence Block 9, she whispered. That night, Andre called the community attorney. "If she can't speak, can I?" The lawyer hesitated. "She taught me how to speak the truth," Andre said. "So, now I will." He spent the night rereading every petition, every flyer, every handwritten note his grandmother had saved. He memorized her words, her tone, her fire. He practiced in front of the bathroom mirror at the hospital, adjusting his voice to carry not just his message, but hers. When the morning came, he dressed in the suit she had bought him last Christmas. It was a little big at the shoulders, the pants hemmed roughly by a neighbor with sewing skills and good intentions. But when he looked in the mirror, he did not see a boy. He saw a voice ready to be heard. Comment brain if you've ever had to step up when no one else could. because Andre didn't just inherit her words. He carried them to the stand. The incident. Mr. Mayor, you are the one who... The courtroom was packed. Every seat was filled with reporters, city officials, and residents from Block 9. People whispered, exchanged glances, and scrolled through their phones, waiting for what was expected to be just another city corruption hearing. At the center of it all sat Mayor Gregory Hale, calm and composed, exuding the confidence of a man who believed himself untouchable. His expensive suit was crisp, his smile unwavering. The mayor leaned back in his chair, his voice smooth and controlled as he addressed the court. I have dedicated my life to serving this city with integrity. Any claim against me is simply a misunderstanding. His words were polished, but the room was tense. The people of Block 9 were not buying it. They had heard promises before. They had seen funds disappear. They had watched their community crumble while the wealthier parts of the city flourished. Then, the bailiff called the next witness. Andre Bell, please take the stand. A murmur rippled through the crowd. A child? Some scoffed. Others exchanged skeptical glances. What could a 12-year-old possibly contribute? Andre walked forward, his small frame dwarfed by the massive courtroom. He adjusted the tie his grandmother had made him wear. His palms were sweaty, but his jaw was set with determination. The prosecutor approached the bench. Andre, do you know why you are here today? Andre cleared his throat and nodded. Yes, sir. The mayor smirked, watching with amusement. This was a game to him, but Andre was not here to play. The prosecutor nodded. Then please, tell the court what you know. Andre inhaled sharply. Then he pointed his small finger straight at the mayor. Mr. Mayor, you are the one who stole from us. You let my neighborhood rot while you watered grass by your mansion. You took our hope and burned it for luxury. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Mayor Hale's face lost its color. His fingers gripped the edge of the table. The mayor scoffed, shaking his head. That is ridiculous. He is just a kid. Andre's voice rose. I am a kid who knows the truth. You said there was not enough money to fix the Block 9 community center, but you had enough money to build a golf course by your house. The courtroom rumbled with whispers. Reporters frantically typed on their phones. Cameras zoomed in. The judge banged his gavel. Order in the court. But Andre was not done. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, the leaked email that had been circulating online. He held it high. I printed it. I read it. I understand it. You signed it. Gasps echoed. People turned to the mayor, whose hands were now balled into fists. His once confident smirk had vanished. The prosecutor took the paper from Andre and presented it to the judge. Your Honor, this document proves Mayor Hale knowingly redirected funds meant for the community into private developments. This is fraud. This is corruption. And this is the testimony of a young man who had the courage to say what so many have been afraid to. The courtroom was dead silent. Then, an eruption. The gallery exploded into murmurs, gasps, and camera flashes. Some people clapped. Others yelled. The mayor's lawyers scrambled. Mayor Hale opened his mouth to protest, but the judge silenced him with a look. This hearing is now in recess. We will reconvene after a formal review of this new evidence. Andre exhaled. His hands were shaking, but his heart was steady. The courtroom had just witnessed something historic. Comment, "Let that boy speak," if you felt the weight of those words. Within hours, Andre's testimony was on every major news channel. clips of him standing in court, pointing at the mayor, and declaring the truth played on repeat. News anchors analyzed every word. Legal experts debated the case, and citizens of the city were left in shock. The hearing, which was expected to be nothing more than routine, had transformed into a scandal of historic proportions. Online, hashtags like #Block9Truth and #Andre versus Mayor began trending. People from all over the country shared their thoughts. Some called Andre a hero, a brave young man who had the courage to stand against corruption. Others demanded immediate action, calling for a deeper investigation into city finances. The mayor's office scrambled. Press releases were issued, filled with carefully worded denials and attempts to downplay the situation. A spokesperson from the mayor's office made a public statement. The young man was clearly emotional. He does not fully understand the complexities of city budgeting. We remain confident that the facts will show Mayor Hale acted appropriately. But the people of Block 9 knew better. Community groups, activists, and even local businesses started digging. They uncovered more emails, messages between city officials discussing the budget redirections in secret. One leaked memo even admitted that public backlash was expected, but that it would die down quickly. The city council, now under extreme pressure, launched an emergency ethics hearing. At first, the mayor doubled down. He insisted that Andre was confused, that the young boy had misinterpreted what he read. He claimed that his decisions were in the best interest of the entire city, not just one neighborhood. But it was too late. The floodgates had opened. Residents of Block 9 filled the streets, holding signs, chanting Andre's name and demanding accountability. News helicopters captured aerial shots of the protests, showing the overwhelming number of people standing together for justice. Andre's grandmother, still in the hospital recovering from her illness, was interviewed by a local reporter. Lying in her bed, weak but determined, she managed a proud smile. "That's my boy," she said. "Told y'all not to underestimate him." The clip of her words went viral. It was replayed on television, quoted in newspaper headlines, and shared across social media. Andre, meanwhile, was still processing everything. He never intended to become the face of a movement. He just wanted to tell the truth. But now, people were looking to him for more. His words had ignited something much bigger than he had ever imagined. The mayor, once so confident and untouchable, now faced the weight of public scrutiny. The Ethics Committee subpoenaed records, called in more witnesses, and examined the financial transactions in question. For the first time in years, the people of Block 9 felt hope. The story had grown beyond one boy's testimony. It was now a fight for justice, for truth, and for every neglected neighborhood that had ever been ignored by those in power. Andre's small voice had become the loudest sound in the city. Like if you believe the smallest voices often tell the biggest truths. Mayor Hale's empire crumbled in just 48 hours. The verdict was damning: ethics violations, fund misappropriation, and perjury. The man who once held the city in his grip now stood disgraced, stripped of power, and forced to resign under mounting pressure. The governor wasted no time, declaring a special election to restore leadership. But for the people of Block 9, this was not just about a new mayor. They wanted justice. The stolen funds had left their neighborhood in ruin: underfunded schools, crumbling infrastructure, and empty promises from politicians who saw them as little more than a statistic. They demanded full restoration, not just an apology. And at the heart of it all was Andre, the 12-year-old who had stood up when no one else would. The citywide press conference was packed. Journalists, community leaders, and residents filled every available space. The tension was electric, a mixture of anger, hope, and the undeniable truth that the city's children had paid the price for corruption. Andre stood at the podium, his small hands gripping the edges, his expression steady. He took a deep breath, exhaling slowly before leaning into the microphone. The room fell into absolute silence. "I wasn't brave," he said, his voice clear and unwavering. "I was just tired of pretending grown-ups always do the right thing." For a moment, the words hung in the air. A stark and brutal truth spoken by a child who had carried more weight than any adult in that room. Then the crowd erupted. Applause, cheers, and a swell of emotion swept through the press conference hall. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment that would define not just Andre's fight, but an entire movement. The microphone squealed as a reporter leaned forward. "Andre, what do you hope happens next?" Andre glanced at his mother, then at the residents of Block 9 who had stood by him through it all. "I hope they put the money back where it belongs. I hope no kid has to sit in a school without books, or drinks from a water fountain that smells like rust. And I hope we stop acting like kids can't see when things are wrong." The mayor's absence left a void, but it also left a choice. The city could sweep this moment under the rug like so many before it, or it could be the spark of something greater. The people in that room, the people watching from their homes, knew what they had to do. Outside, signs filled the streets. "Justice for Block 9. No more corruption. We stand with Andre." The movement was no longer just about one neighborhood. It was about an entire city waking up. A journalist spoke into the camera, her voice barely cutting through the roar of the crowd. "This is not just about politics. This is about accountability, about communities refusing to be ignored any longer." And at the center of it all stood Andre, a boy who had carried the weight of justice on his young shoulders. He did not smile in victory. He did not gloat. He simply stood there, knowing the fight was not over, but also knowing he had taken the first step when no one else would. Now, it was the city's turn. Type "Justice for Block 9" if you believe Andre carried more weight than any adult in that room. The winds of change swept through Block 9, carrying with them the promise of a new beginning. The special election ushered in a new mayor, one who vowed to reinvest in underserved communities. Words became action as the city turned its focus toward healing and rebuilding. The first project was the heart of Block 9, the community center. Once a symbol of neglect and corruption, it was now reborn. The city rebuilt it from the ground up, a state-of-the-art facility dedicated to education, mentorship, and civic engagement. At the grand opening, a gleaming plaque was unveiled above the entrance, the Bell Center for Justice, a tribute not only to those who had fought for change, but to the belief that justice begins at the community level. Andre stood among the gathered crowd, his presence quiet but undeniable. The boy who had sparked a movement now watched as his neighborhood flourished. He had never wanted fame, nor did he see himself as anything more than a kid who refused to stay silent. Yet, the impact of his courage was undeniable. A journalist stepped forward, microphone in hand. "Andre, you stood against corruption when no one else would. How does it feel to see all of this come to life?" Andre glanced at the newly built center, then at the families who would finally have a safe space to gather and grow. "I'm not a hero," he said simply. "I'm just a kid with good teachers." The mayor, standing nearby, nodded in agreement. "And we are all better for listening to him." The changes did not stop with Block 9. Andre's fight had ignited a citywide initiative to ensure funds were protected, schools were properly supported, and youth voices were included in policy discussions. More than that, it inspired a movement, one that extended beyond city limits. Andre's efforts earned him a full academic scholarship, an opportunity that ensured his future would be as bright as the one he helped create for others. But he did not stop there. As a newly appointed youth ambassador for civic education, he traveled to schools, speaking with students about their power to hold leaders accountable. He taught them what he had learned the hard way, that justice is not a privilege. It is a right that must be defended. One evening, as the sun cast golden hues over the city, Andre walked past the Bell Center for Justice. Inside, children laughed, students studied, and a mural depicting the strength of the community stretched across the far wall. It was no longer just a building. It was a promise fulfilled. A passerby stopped him, a father holding his young daughter's hand. "My son used to play basketball at the old center before it fell apart," the man said. "Now, thanks to you, my daughter will have a place to learn and grow." "Thank you, Andre." Andre smiled, shaking his head. "Don't thank me. Just promise to keep fighting for what is right." The man nodded, his grip on his daughter's hand tightening. Always. As the city lights flickered on, illuminating a future shaped by accountability and hope, Andre knew his work was far from over, but for now, he allowed himself a moment to take it all in. A new beginning for Block 9 had arrived. Drop a, "If you think every city should have kids like Andre holding adults accountable." A month had passed since the scandal shook the city, and Andre's name had traveled far beyond Block 9. His words had sparked not just change, but a movement. Now, he stood at the state capitol, invited to speak before lawmakers, educators, and leaders who had seen what a single voice could do. The chamber was packed, every seat filled. Rows of politicians sat at attention, some shifting in their chairs, some leaning forward, eyes fixed on the young boy standing behind the grand wooden podium. The weight of history pressed down on the room, but Andre carried it with the same quiet determination that had made the city listen. He adjusted the microphone. The murmur of the crowd faded into silence. He took a deep breath, then spoke. "I know what you all want to say," he began. "You want to tell me I'm brave. You want to tell me I'm special." He paused, scanning the faces before him. "But I'm not." A ripple of surprise moved through the audience. He continued, "I was just a kid who saw something wrong and spoke up. That should not be brave. That should be normal." A hush settled over the room, the weight of his words sinking in. Andre's gaze swept across the chamber, finding the teachers who had encouraged him, the community leaders who had stood by him, and the reporters who had followed his journey from the beginning. "Don't clap for me," he said. "Clap for the next kid who's watching and wondering if they should speak up." He let the words linger before driving his final point home. Yes, you should. The room erupted. The applause was thunderous, echoing off the high ceilings. Some lawmakers stood immediately, others followed, until the entire chamber was on its feet. Teachers wiped tears from their eyes. Even the most hardened politicians seemed visibly moved. Andre stepped back from the podium, allowing the moment to live on its own. He had said what needed to be said, and now it was up to them to carry it forward. Later, as he walked through the grand hallways of the Capitol, a young girl approached him, no older than 10. She clutched a notebook to her chest, her eyes wide with something between awe and determination. "Mr. Andre?" she asked hesitantly. "How do you know when it's time to speak up?" Andre crouched down to meet her gaze. "If you see something that makes your heart hurt," he said, "then it's time." She nodded solemnly, as if taking an unspoken vow. Andre watched as she disappeared into the crowd, knowing she would not be the last. His speech would be replayed on television, printed in newspapers, and quoted in classrooms. But none of that mattered as much as the simple truth that had carried him through this journey. One voice, when used with courage, could change everything. Comment: Andre is a giant, if this young man's courage left you speechless. Andre Bell reminded an entire city that truth does not care about age, status, or fear. It only needs a voice willing to rise above silence. His journey, from a boy who dared to question authority to a symbol of justice, proved that courage does not come from power, but from conviction. Block 9 would never be the same. The stolen funds had been restored. The Bell Center for Justice stood as a beacon for the community, and accountability had taken root in a system that once thrived on neglect. But more than policies and buildings, it was the people who had changed. Parents listened more. Teachers encouraged harder. Kids, watching Andre stand before lawmakers and demand better, realized they, too, had a voice. The echoes of his fight traveled beyond city limits. Schools across the country discussed his story. Activists cited his words. Civic leaders invited young voices into conversations where they had long been absent. One moment, one boy, a ripple that refused to fade. Andre never sought recognition. When asked about his role in everything that happened, he would simply shake his head and say, "I just told the truth." The rest was up to everyone else, and that was the power of it all. His belief that the responsibility did not end with him. His speech at the state capitol was replayed in classrooms and homes, reminding people everywhere that silence enables injustice, but a single voice can shake even the most powerful foundations. Change did not stop with Andre, nor should it. His story was not just about him, it was about every child, every community, and every moment when someone faces the choice to speak or stay silent. One voice, one moment, one city, forever changed. Watch our next story. Black girl walks into court. What she says about her stepfather leaves the judge frozen. Subscribe and turn on that bell to follow real stories of truth, transformation, and bravery. Share this now. Someone out there is one voice away from speaking up.